Hi, Tom from bknutrition.com, and today I want to talk about glute training. And here are 5 underrated exercises for glutes, which you may not know about, may have done in the past, but have forgotten about, and something I think that would benefit everybody to incorporate into their leg training. Now, although these are glute exercises, they actually are part of quad training and hamstring training, because I believe in incorporating glute training into the legs. I don't program a separate glute day for my female clients. I don't program glute days for my male clients. They don't ever request it. But what you can do is incorporate glute activation type exercises into your leg training, because the glutes are part of the leg. They're used with quad training, they're used with hamstring training. So I don't see the relevance of doing a glute only day, because you need to have, if you want to develop your glutes properly, how they tie into the rest of the leg muscles. So when I was bodybuilding, I never do a specific glute day, although I was renowned for having shredded glutes on stage. I did. I'll try and get a picture up here or something, my last competition, but I always had very conditioned glutes and very tight glutes, with the glutes coming into the hamstrings as proper tie-ins, and obviously from the front of the leg also the glutes were tight in, so it gave the front of the leg a good shape. So I never did a specific glute training, but I always had very good glutes, and this is because of the training I did and these exercises which I'm going to share with you now. And you can maybe incorporate into your own training and get something more from it. Now, what you won't see in this video is hip thrusts. You won't see glute kickbacks. Okay, there's a place for those things. They're direct glute exercises, and I do program those in sometimes into, say, additional leg stuff they can do. But the majority of the leg training I program for my clients and for myself incorporates other muscles as a compound. So let's get into those. So the first one is a reverse Smith machine lunge. Now, this is, maybe I should have saved the best for last, but this is an absolute killer exercise, and it's something I don't see a lot of people doing, maybe because it is such a tough exercise. Now, the secret to doing this exercise, you can do it with the bar on the back, but actually the real hurt comes from the front squat position here. Sorry, it's not my microphone there. So if you can put the bar across your front in a front squat position, and this will be relatively more easy to do on a Smith machine than it would be, say, doing a free bar movement. What you tend to find is, because the bar is at the front and you're taking a lot of weight on the front, the glutes really have to kick through to get the weight up. So when you're doing this exercise, there'll be a video here. So if you're listening on the podcast, go back and watch the video, and on the link on the website, there'll be a video here showing this exercise. But if you get the bar on the front and then you walk forward, so you've got that little bit of lean back into the exercise, and then you drop down, what you have to do then is the glute has to engage us at the bottom. Think about central gravity coming down through the body there. The bar's right on the front, so that it comes down, and the glutes at the back, so it has to kick through and upwards, and you get an incredible amount of force applied into the glutes to get it back up. Now, of course, this is going to work the hamstrings, this is going to work the adductors, this is going to work the quads as well. So it's not a glute isolation exercise. However, every single person I've done this with, and every time I do it, I always feel it the next day in my glutes. It's an excellent exercise for glute activation. And remember, we want to train the glutes to be part of the leg as a whole. We don't just want to have a big glute and then it doesn't tie in properly to the hamstrings. So reverse Smith machine lunge, absolutely incredible exercise. I urge you to try it with very little weight to start with, because it gets very heavy very quickly, and it can be quite a taxing exercise because the weight's pushing down onto your chest. Next one, sumo dumbbell deadlift. Now, I'm sure you do know about sumo deadlifts, and you probably do them in your workouts. However, what people don't do is they don't edit the exercise ever so slightly to force the movement onto their glutes. Now, when most people do a sumo deadlift, when they come to the top, they'll lean back, which is what you do in deadlifts to engage the back at the top. However, if you want to engage the glutes, you want the glutes to be the predominant exercise. So, excuse me, and there'll be a video here in a second. So when you're coming up for the sumo deadlift with a dumbbell, you can actually lean forward, so you round your shoulders ever so slightly forward, so when you come up, the actual contracting muscle is the glute at the top, because you shifted the weight off the back and you've pushed it onto the contracting into the glute to get that last little bit of a kick. Now, with this slight amendment, and what I'll do if you listen to podcasts, what I'm going to do here is put the two exercises together so you can see the difference. I'll stack them one by one, and you'll be able to see the slight difference. Now, you can do sumo deadlift for legs anyway. You can focus onto the legs by pushing the ground away rather than pulling yourself up. Sounds silly, that's how you do it to get the engagement from the hamstrings rather than from the back. But if you lean forward ever so slightly, round your shoulders ever so slightly, coming up to the top, you can really engage through the glutes, and you can get that massive contraction on the glute to the top. Not many people do that variation. They just think about getting as much weight as possible, and it's not about the weight when we're looking at glutes. The main thing I see the mistake people making with their glute training is they're trying to rack up as many plates on the bar to do their hip thrusts or whatever. And it's kind of like a sort of an Instagram thing. Look how much weight I can get on the bar. But actually that doesn't really do much for your glutes. It does maybe a lot for your hips, but actually when you're trying to engage the glutes, you're trying to contract the glutes with as much force as possible and push against the weight. Remember, bodybuilding, and this is what glute training is, it's bodybuilding, it's not strength training. If we're looking to grow a bigger glute muscle or get a better glute muscle, it's not about the weight, it's about engaging the muscle and taking it to failure. So when you're doing a hip thrust, when you're doing a kickback, if you do kickbacks, or if you're doing this exercise, the Sumo dumbbell deadlift, it's not about the weight, it's about getting that contraction, that force contraction onto the glute at the top. Doing a heavier weight will actually pull you forward more on your back, and you'll be trying to tension the weight on your back and take the weight onto your back rather than engaging the glute. So this movement is not about how much weight, it's about how much contraction and tension you can push through the glute. So it's a really important point to remember. Don't try and impress everybody by doing this really heavy weight. You don't have to do it. So a dumbbell sumo deadlift, excellent exercise if it's done correctly. And I'll guarantee if you do this variation, you will feel it the next day. Number 3 is a goblet squat. Again, a goblet squat you probably know about, you probably have done it for glutes. However, there's 2 variations for a goblet squat. You can do it wide or you can do it narrow. Now, wide goblet squat will allow you to put more onto your adductors and onto your hamstrings potentially, but actually it doesn't do a lot for the glute because your legs are so wide out. You can't really get that contraction. So what I would recommend if you're doing goblet squat is to do a very narrow stance, so almost shoulder width apart, narrow stance. When you're coming down to the bottom, you can get more depth into that. You can really get onto the bottom. And when you're coming up towards the top, again, if you think about contracting the glute rather than pushing up with your quads, which is what a lot of people do, if you're trying to focus onto the glutes, you need to be contracting the glutes at the top, so you're bringing your hips forward and pushing the contraction with the glutes, not erecting yourself with your quads. So yes, you need the quads to do this, of course, it's a compound exercise, but when you get into the top, you need to think about pushing the hips forward, and that comes from contracting the glutes. That's what the glute does, it pushes the hips forward. If you contract the glute in properly, yes, you'll get the stand up, but you'll also get the contraction on the glutes as well. So that's how you engage properly with a goblet squat. So if done right, goblet squat, again, a very good glute exercise, although it does do quads as well. Number 4, a Romanian deadlift with a target for the glutes. Again, this is another standard exercise that a lot of people do, but you can then focus it onto glutes more by a small, tiny little addition. Now, what you do with an RDL focus on glutes is that when you're doing a normal dumbbell RDL, you would pull through, say, the back and contract the hamstrings to come up, so you can get a lot of weight on the exercise, one of my favorite exercises. However, drop the weight down a little bit. When you come to the bottom of the movement on the RDL, instead of trying to pull yourself up with your back, focus on the glutes squeezing forward to tighten up, and that will start to erect your body. And then yes, you're going to still need to use some of the hamstrings to bring yourself up, but if you are pulling with your glutes and contracting your glutes, you're going to start that process off straight away. And if you slow the movement down a little bit, you can really push through the glutes and erect yourself, almost like you would say on a reverse hyper. You can bring yourself into a standing position by contracting your glutes nice and tight. You will need to pull your back into it a little bit at the end, and obviously the hamstrings come into it as well, but you can focus on the glutes and engage in the glutes by thinking about contracting them to lift you up rather than just pulling the weight up with your back. And that's why a lot of people when they're doing RDLs develop good back and good hamstrings, but the glutes don't really get the tension because people are thinking about lifting the weight rather than engaging the muscle. So you need to think about contracting the muscle properly. Do that by squeezing the glutes and pulling yourself upwards with the glutes, and at the top, again, keep that slight arch round forward like we did with the sumo deadlifts. That will keep the pressure on the glutes at the top. If you do a normal deadlift and you stand up straight, you'll contract the back, which is good if you're back training and lower back training, But if we're looking for the glute, we want to make sure that the shoulders are slightly rounded at the top. Not so much we're giving yourself a shoulder injury, of course, but slightly rounded at the top. So the pressure, if you look at the center of gravity, the first muscle it hits, because the body's slightly forward, the first muscle it hits is the glute here, and not the top of the back. So that's what you could be thinking about, where the center of gravity is for the contraction. It's the glute, it's not the back. So an RDL with a glute focus, another excellent exercise. And then the last one is a reverse lunge off a step. Now, we talked about reverse lunges with the Smith machine. However, a lot of people don't do reverse lunges off a step. A lot of people do reverse lunges with dumbbells, and that is a good leg builder. It's a good hamstring, quad, and glute builder, of course. However, if we want to talk about activation of the glutes, we need to stretch the glutes into a position. Now, you might have seen this, or you might have done it yourself, people doing on a assisted pull-up, some sort of weird exercise where they hold on the assisted pull-up and push the stack down, which is actually the actually overcomplicated and weird version of what I'm talking about now, is doing a reverse lunge off a step. I would never advise you doing that assisted dip pull-up thing with the leg when you push down. I don't know why people do that, because there's so many better exercises to do it. It's just a showy thing for Instagram, probably. Do this exercise instead, much better. You'll get a lot more recruitment. So set a step. It doesn't need to be big, probably about, I don't know, 6 inches, if that's what 6 inches is. About 6 inches off the floor, so that we can get more of a deep stretch into the glute and onto the quad. So you would normally do this on, say, maybe a quad day, or also probably on a hamstring day. But either way, you can do it for both, and you can still tie it in with the glute. So when you're coming down to the bottom, pause at the bottom. Don't rest your knee on the floor. Make sure you get that really deep stretch, so you're right at the bottom. And from the bottom there, you stabilize yourself with your back leg, and you push through your front leg. As you're coming up, you should be able to feel the glute activating. If you've paused at the bottom, the glute will have to activate, because the quad is in an overstretched position, so it can't really activate properly. Because your leg's back, you can't really push through the back leg, so the glute will engage first to push yourself up, and you get that really good recruitment coming up into it. Yes, the quads are going to be engaged, yes, the hamstrings are going to be engaged, but you get that really deep movement, that really deep stretch. You will engage with the glutes first, but you have to pause at the bottom. If you don't pause at the bottom, it's not as good. So you don't want to be using massive weights on this. It's quite cardiovascular. It does leave you out of breath, and it's quite a taxing exercise. But it's one I don't see people doing a lot, or they're doing it wrong. When I do this with clients, and I program into clients' workouts, the first thing they come back to me saying, those were horrible exercises, my glutes are on fire. Overwhelmingly, that's the response I get. So I know it works. I know it works for me. I know it's for my clients, and it can work for you too if you do it right. Again, the clip will be here. Now, as a sort of a bonus, there is I was going to do 6 exercises, but this is not really a glute exercise, but it is a nice bonus exercise that you can do. I was umming and ahhing about putting this in with the hamstrings, but it is a bit of hamstrings, it is a bit of glute. But this last sort of bonus exercise is a high foot placement leg press. Now, this is not really glute or hamstring, it's a little bit of both. What it allows you to do is to get a nice, decent contraction on the hamstring, but you'll also pull the glute into it as well. The idea is you put your feet very high on the leg press. Now, as a word of safety on this, make sure you have got a spotter or you're very knowledgeable about when you're going to fail on this, because if your feet slip on this exercise, you're going to have the weight stack coming down over you, and your legs are going to be in there. A very nasty experiment there. It's going to go wrong. So make sure you have got someone watching you, or you're very aware of your own abilities. Put your foot high on the leg press, and then what you can do is you can get a nice, again, deep stretch onto the glute, what we're talking about in the previous exercise. And then when you push out to the end of the exercise, what you do is you lift your toes and push through your heels right at the top of the exercise. And what that does, it puts the hamstrings in a really stretched position. You can get a really nice stretch and contraction onto the hamstrings. Again, don't do a lot of weight on this exercise. This is purely to make sure we're engaging, working through the hamstrings, working through the glutes. It's a nice little bonus exercise that I do. Sometimes I do it as a finish on hamstring day. Sometimes I do it as an addition to, say, it's a glute training. If I'm doing say like hip thrust, or if I'm doing like the reverse leg thing, I would do this as sort of like a finisher, just to sort of round it off nicely. It's not a heavyweight exercise. It's just something that's going to really hit the hamstrings and the glutes as a sort of a secondary exercise. But it's a bonus. I sort of throw it in just to give you something else, because again, it's something I don't see a lot of people doing, and I think it's something that you could benefit from if you do it correctly. It's not an ego exercise. You're not going to get loads of weight on it, and people are probably going to say, "Oh, you're doing leg press wrong." Don't matter, you'll feel it on your legs, you'll feel it on your hamstrings. So I hope this video helped you. I hope this gave you some new ideas. I hope this gave you maybe an interest to go out and train your glutes in a different way rather than just doing kickbacks and hip thrusts all the time. And please take on board what I said about not doing massive amounts of weight all the time. Glutes is not about the amount of weight you can do, although I do see so many people doing that, and a lot of women do it. It seems to be sort of right at the passage, being able to get 3 plates on a hip thrust. Honestly, I get much more recruitment, much more engagement for my glutes from doing, say, 2.5 plates on a hip thrust, and I consider myself fairly strong. You know, so 3 going to 3.5 plates on a hip thrust when you're only a sort of a very small size 6 woman is probably not a good idea. Okay, if you can do it right and get a good contraction, yeah. But generally, those sorts of people doing that sort of exercise, they don't have good glute development because they're doing it wrong. They're focusing on the weight rather than the engagement of the exercise. And certainly the people I've seen with the best glutes have got really good form, really excellent form, or they've just got it genetically, so they don't have to work that hard for it. But you know, can't slag people off for having good genetics, I suppose. So thanks for watching. I hope this was a helpful video for you. If it was, leave some comments below. If it wasn't, let me know. If you thought I was wrong on one of the exercises, please let me know. I do enjoy a good discussion. And I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.